Welcome back to a brand new episode of Mastering Programming. In today's episode, we write a program which takes input from the user as altitude and identifies which atmosphere that altitude belongs to. Without further talking, let's get right into it. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed my brand new intro. Without further talking, let's get into it. So to start us off, I will start by creating the input, and I'm gonna store the input inside an object called altitude. I'm simply going to say input, and I'm going to say insert the altitude. And let's change this to normal n. But right now, the input is being stored as a string. However, I'm pretty sure the user is going to put altitudes as an integer, such as 15 or 20, because we're asking for kilometers. We're asking for an integer. So all I'm going to do is simply type in int and then move to the end. And right now, the input is being stored or being wrapped inside of an integer. Let's straight away reformat the style so we don't get that annoying line. And I will start by creating a very simple if statement. I'll simply come here and I'm going to say if the altitude is larger than 0, but less than or equal to 17, I think. Let me just check real quick. Yep. Then this altitude belongs to, and I'm going to print it. I'll say this altitude belongs to the troposphere. So now, all what happens here is that Python is going to check if the altitude that the user is going to put, if the number that the user is going to put is less than 17 but higher than 0, then the console is going to print out this altitude belongs to the troposphere. Now, because we're going to be using this a lot, so I'm just simply going to copy this, and I'm going to be pasting it more than once, just 3 times, and we're going to type here elif. The word elif allows us to use to include more than one if statement that will run if the first one is not correct. And we're going to change the ranges here. So I'm going to put 17 and we're going to put 60, and we're going to change this to the stratosphere. And I'm going to change this to 60 and this one to 120. And I'm going to change this to the mesosphere. So right now what happens is Python will check if the altitude inserted by the user is higher than 0 and lower than 17. If it is, it will print this altitude belongs to the troposphere. If not, it will check for the second elif statement. If this is true, it will print this out. If it's not, it will check at the bottom, and so on. Next, however, I want to make sure that if the user puts a number under 0 or smaller than 0, let's say someone puts a negative number, that Python will identify the user that that number is invalid because there is no atmosphere underneath the troposphere, or at least for the sake of this tutorial. So all I'm going to say is I'm going to say elif altitude is less than 0. So this time I'm saying, now if the altitude inserted by the user is less than 0, print out this altitude is out of range. Now, let's check out what happens if we run this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and run it, and it's going to say insert the altitude, and let's go ahead and say 60, and it's going to say this altitude belongs to the stratosphere, which is correct because we said if it's equal to or less than 60, say this altitude belongs to the stratosphere. Let's also give it a go and put an invalid number. So let's say -40, and it will say this altitude is out of range. But what happens if someone puts in something greater than 120? Let's say someone puts in 200. Nothing is going to happen. And to fix that, all I'm going to say is say else. So if there is a number that's not under 0, but also not less than 120, which means if there's a number higher than 120, but also higher than 0, all we need to do is print that this altitude belongs to the thermo and exosphere. Now this is a shortcut for something else, which is a thermostat. So I'm just going to leave it at thermo for now. Now let's run this and see what happens. So we already tried everything else. So let's try put in 200 and it will say this altitude belongs to the thermo and XSV. Now this code works, but notice how the user only gets one chance or one try at putting an altitude. I don't like that. I want the user to be able to keep trying this out and keep inserting altitudes as much as they can. So I'm simply going to highlight this and I'm going to press on tab and I'm going to put this in a while statement, in a never ending while statement. And pretty much right now, 3 is always going to be greater than 2. So Python will keep running this code inside of the while statement until that statement is broken somehow, or until that condition is somehow broken. To break it, all I'm going to do is say if, or actually, sorry, I'm going to say end loop. So I'm creating a new object here, and that object will take in the user's opinion, or sorry, the user's decision whether or not they want to continue. So I'm going to say, do you wish to continue? And I'm going to say insert n if no. And all we're going to do here is say if end loop is equal to capital N, capital N, or end loop is equal to small n, break. And right now, all Python is going to do is it's going to check what the user have inputted here. If the user presses on capital N or N, this while loop is going to end. If the user presses on anything else, the user will keep running. Now that we have completed all of the while loop, let's run this and see what happens. It says insert the altitude, and I'm going to say 3, and it's going to ask us, this altitude belongs to the troposphere. Do you wish to continue? Insert n if no. So I'm going to go ahead and insert n to see if the while loop will stop, and it indeed stopped. Thank you for watching. Have a good day, and please like and subscribe.